Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a discussion video. I'm going to talk about something today that is not exactly knife related. I've got a bunch of knives out here, and some of you will know why. If you know the rules around YouTube, they ask specifically if you've got firearms appearing in your video, and so I want to make sure that there aren't any. We're going to talk about the story available through CTV News and other Canadian news sources where Justin Trudeau responded briefly to a question from a reporter about banning certain firearms. And this is, you know, all the typical nonsense about firearms gets brought up. So I figured it would be an appropriate video to respond to. I will put a link down in the description below so you can see the original video. So the reporter begins by asking if he would be willing to list the assault style weapons that they plan to ban. Okay, so first of all, I've got to ask, what does that even mean? Assault style weapons. All right, let me be very clear about something. In Canada and even in the US, all right, people are not allowed to own military style weapons for fighting other people. Okay. Yes, in the US, you can get a tax stamp and jump through a lot of hoops and spend a lot of money. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars to get a fully automatic weapon, but virtually no one does it. It's very difficult. Okay, so the first thing we need to dispel is this misnomer. There are people with assault style weapons running around out there. I think, and this term seems to be purposely used by those in media and those with an agenda to try and convey this false idea that there are, average citizens in Canada and the US running around out there with automatic weapons ready to pop out and blow everyone away at the drop of a hat. That is simply not the case. Okay. And so that's the first thing. I've got to pick up on that assault style weapons talk. Moving on, in response, Justin Trudeau says, "We have long been committed to strengthening gun control in this country." Again, let me stop right there. He's going to go on and I'll deal with the things that he says in a second. But he says, "We've long been committed to strengthening gun control in this country." I have to ask, why? Okay, we have very, very strong gun control in Canada already. There is no need. In fact, many of the things that already go on in terms of, owning and using firearms are completely draconian and over the top and useless when it comes to having any impact whatsoever on public safety. All right. So, very briefly, if you want to own a firearm in Canada, you have to take a course, you have to pass tests, you have to have a background check, an extremely detailed background check where they check references and check on your criminal history. Not only that, but that background check, by the way, continues to be run. So, as a license holder here in Canada, I get a background check run on me every single day, along with every other legal firearms owner in Canada. It happens every single day. And so that begs the question, why? Why would you want to increase controls in a situation where we already have crazy amounts of gun control, most of which is already over the top? Okay. And so I'll get to some maybe speculation on the reason why in a second, because in terms of actual facts and figures, there's no good reason. So moving on, he goes on to say, including banning military-style assault weapons. Again, what are military-style assault weapons? It's language purposely designed to make people think, again, that everyone's running around out there with these firearms that are able to kill all kinds of people. And that's simply not the case, especially not the case in Canada. It's, again, not even the case in the US. All right. It's just not a thing. Now, I would even go so far as to say, given our current firearm laws, if people in Canada were allowed to own what are technically called prohibited weapons, all right, there would still be no present danger to the life, liberty, and happiness and safety of Canadians, right? Even if if you had to go through all that's required to get a firearm in Canada, and after going through that, you could buy, I don't know, a fully automatic AK-47 or M4 or, I don't know, something, a Gatling gun or something crazy like that. Because of all that's involved in being allowed to do that, it would be completely fine. You would already be making sure that whoever's having those things is not going to do any harm with them. All right. So, He then says, okay, including banning military-style assault weapons. He says, we have no need in Canada for guns designed to kill the largest amount of people in the shortest amount of time. Okay, we are already not allowed to have weapons that are designed to kill large numbers of people in amounts of time. Okay, and really, if you wanted to do that, a firearm would not be your best choice anyway. Right? In theaters of war, when they want to kill the largest number of people in the shortest amount of time, they use bombs. Okay, firearms are not effective at killing large numbers of people in short amounts of time. Okay, furthermore, guns that we are able to have in Canada are not designed for that purpose. Okay, we do have some firearms in Canada that are designed for target shooting and for practical shooting drills that people use in a sport. Okay, we have firearms in Canada that are designed to shoot long distances really accurately, again, that people use for sport, for competition, and we have firearms used for hunting. Okay, now what seems to be the case is that if anyone has essentially what are, I don't have a leather sheath here, but let's use this knife as an example. So this knife has a Kydex sheath, all right? It's plastic, it's black, it's meant to hold the knife pretty securely, to be very slim and easy to carry around. All right, it's a fairly modern innovation, and it does make things a little more convenient to carry this knife around compared to, say, leather, which is going to be bigger, it's going to be bulkier. And so, a matter of convenience, all right, does not make something more dangerous. And I think that's often what when people think about a military style assault weapon, they often talk about detachable magazines, they talk about pistol grips, and those things in no way, right, are just about making it easier to kill people. They make a gun easier to use, easier to handle, more accurate, and essentially better for hunting, really. Better for hunting, better for target shooting, better for the things that you would use a gun for legally. All right, it's like saying that, putting backup assist or the parallel parking, ability on an automobile, which are essentially just modern innovations, make them more dangerous. And we better ban people from having those cars that are more effective and easier to use because they can do more damage with those cars. All right. And essentially those are features that sometimes get picked on when it comes to firearms. And so, yeah, it's just baloney. He points out that the Liberals have wanted this for a long time. Again, I know that. The problem is it's not sensible. All right. So I don't know. Maybe I don't like sushi. All right. I actually do like sushi, but let's just imagine for a moment that I didn't like sushi. All right. It would be inappropriate for me to start passing laws that ban sushi. All right, and perhaps a better example is swimming. So let's imagine I'm a person who can't swim, I'm pretty afraid of water, and I get really uncomfortable whenever I'm in close proximity to water, and I certainly wouldn't go in a boat. Okay, well, that's fine. That's my life, that's my personal preference, no big deal. However, it becomes a big deal if I somehow get some amount of political power and then I start passing laws to make it so that there can be no water. Remember, water makes me uncomfortable. Right? So I'm going to ban swimming pools and I'm going to ban beaches and I'm going to ban boats because I don't, if water, I have this irrational fear of water and I feel like everyone else must share my fear of water. And so I'm going to pass laws to make sure that no one goes around water in my country, in Canada. Now, I bring that example up, and everyone would think that's completely ludicrous, right? You'd go, Kevin, you're insane if you were to try to do that. And you'd be right. But guess what? Water kills more people in Canada than firearms. So I could make a much better case for banning swimming and swimming pools based on public health, all right, than I can make for firearms. Because the fact is, firearms are just not a problem in Canada. They're purely a political tool used by the Liberal Party and those on the left to manipulate people who have an irrational fear of firearms. All right? And just like the person who has an irrational fear of water, the best solution for them would be learn how to swim. and that irrational fear will go away. The same thing holds true of firearms. Learn a little bit about what you're talking about, and then the irrational, the emotional response will go away. So I know I'm responding now to the fact that liberals have wanted this for a while. And he goes on to say that this is a large consensus in the country, and that is absolutely not true. Okay. In fact, the Liberal Party being in power is not the will of the majority of Canadians. All right. That's why they have a minority government. The Conservatives won actually more than 50% of the vote. Now, moving on, he says we want to see less violence and fewer deaths from gun violence in this country. Well, let's go back to my previous point. We have about 200 gun deaths a year in Canada. All right. That is nothing. And guess what? Most of those gun deaths are people who are involved, the purposeful ones, okay? Yes, some of those are suicides, but our current gun laws already do a lot to address suicide. But the sort of gun violence and violent crime stuff in Canada is just such a small percentage that it's, again, not even worth thinking about. All right, 200 gun deaths in Canada. I was already mentioning, guess how many people drown every year in Canada? 400. All right, if we brought up other things like alcohol or driving, those things kill way more people, all right, than firearms do in Canada. So again, it points to the fact that gun violence, and I guess we ought to come back to one other point related to this. First of all right, we don't have a problem with gun violence in Canada. Second of all, adopting more gun control will not change gun violence in Canada. I've actually got a whole video where we get into some of the numbers here. I'm not going to reiterate all of that, but suffice to say, the guns that are used in criminal activity in Canada are not legally purchased firearms owned by legal gun owners. That's not how it works. Okay, and so placing more restrictions on me, a legal gun owner, by common sense, it can't have any impact on crime. Okay, if you want to affect crime, you need to deal with poverty, you need to deal with cultural issues, right? You need to get rid of the idea that we've got in our cities that certain portions of the population think it's cool to be a gangster and to be bad and to pop a nine, and all this sort of rap mentality is nonsense, and it encourages people toward a bad style of living, right? Adopt stricter gang violence laws, adopt stricter gang activity laws, and you'll do far, far more. All right, now let me come back and talk about the few shootings that do happen. Yes, there have been some mass shootings in Canada. One, that proves that gun control does not do anything to alleviate mass shootings. And we've already established that it doesn't do anything to alleviate violence. Even in countries where they have even stricter laws than Canada, guess what? Violent crime is not impacted. In fact, some of those countries, violent crime is skyrocketing. Okay, and there are different reasons for that. But one of the things that criminals have said, there's whole videos out there where they interview a bunch of convicted criminals, and one of the things they'll say, well, hey, if I think someone might have a gun, I'm going to behave differently. All right, so you could just as easily make the argument, in fact, more easily make the argument that the knowledge that people may have firearms stops a great deal of crime. Okay, and in fact, statistics bear that out in our neighbors to the south, where they're allowed to concealed carry, where it's much more likely to find someone with a firearm. The low estimate is that firearms stop about 200,000 violent crimes a year. Now, 30,000 people die from firearms, but if you just look at those things side by side, and of course, when you understand that, again, the vast majority, like out of the 30,000, like 29,000 are gang related. I'm exaggerating for the purpose of, that's hyperbole. Okay, I know that, but you get the point. The fact is that firearms, it's easy to make the case that firearms are an aid to public safety rather than a hindrance. All right. The guns that they're planning to ban, I thought I'd close out with this and just point out that, yeah, the Mini 14, the M14, the Beretta CX4 Storm, the CSA VZ58 are all on the list, or all very likely to be on the list. There's been some talk about the AR-15, but AR-15s are already restricted in Canada. That means we can only use them at a range. Excuse me. Anyway, so there may be less will, or less, they may see less purpose in carrying that out. Um, and by the way, the sad thing is that under our current law, banning these particular firearms, or any specific individual firearm, can be done by what's called an order in council. Okay, that means it doesn't require any legislation, which means you don't have to have a full, you don't have to have the full political process taking place to get that done. So that's my discussion about Justin Trudeau's current nonsense. And just, the reason I share all this stuff is not so much is one, because yeah, I'm frustrated and it's stupid, and okay, government makes a lot of dumb choices, but this one in particular is especially bad because it speaks to an underlying theme in government, which is we don't want our people to have the capacity to be free. All right, we just don't trust our citizens. And that's the bigger issue here. And by the way, this has generally been a thing in terms of, the spectrum between left and right. Okay, one of the big determining factors in, that whole one of the big overarching themes in that whole spectrum is those on the left are very opposed to free citizens who do their own thing. They always want big government to control everything, everywhere you go, everything you think, everything you write, everything you read. It should all be controlled by the government. So, you wake up, the government tells you, okay, time to go pee. Good, you go over and go pee. Then you check your list, and the government says, oh, it's time for eggs this morning. Okay, I guess I eat eggs. Like, that's left thinking. On the right, people just go, do what you want. Okay, and that's much more appealing to me, and ought to be much more appealing to anyone who values their personal volition, right? Who wants to be able to say, hey, I want this, I like this, I'm interested in this, I want to be able to do it. In a free society, you're able to do and engage in the activities you want to do and engage in. So that's the end of my rant about the current situation with the gun bans potentially coming up in the next day. I'm not sure when exactly this video will post. Thanks for watching. Thanks for allowing me to vent a little bit. And I know many of you will share my frustration, so feel free to comment down below. I would more importantly, though, love to hear from those of you who disagree. All right, I'm going to share this on Facebook just in general on my friends list, rather than just on pages that are related to this discussion. So if you're just a friend of mine and you want to weigh in the comments, I would love to have you do that as well. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.